Good evening, everybody. My name is Avi Rosenthal, and I have the honor of being the chair of the Z-Wave Alliance. Welcome all to the very first fireside chat of 2026. I still have trouble saying that. Like, I think my checks still say, no, not checks. I know, nobody knows what a check is. Anyway, welcome. We are very excited to have you all here. We thank you very much for taking some time out of your busy day here at CES 2026 to listen to these fine gentlemen. Well, Abe too, but you know, the rest of them is, no. Those, Mark? Okay, fair enough. No, Abe knows I love him. These fine people, all about Z-Wave and the latest iteration of the Z-Wave Alliance control command classes. I know there were certain reminders I was supposed to give, but I don't remember what they are, so somebody has to remind me about the reminders. But tomorrow, we are once again going to have a fireside chat that I am very happy to moderate. It is being sponsored by ADT, and we're very excited about that conversation as well, so please make sure that you come by and see that one. This is actually self-sponsored. This was so important to the Z-Wave Alliance that we wanted to make sure that we got this information out to all of you folks, and so we self-sponsored this one, which is something different for the Z-Wave Alliance. For those of you unaware, the Z-Wave Alliance is a collection of companies that all adhere to one RF protocol called Z-Wave. More than 300 companies. We are an open plan, an open system, an SDO, if you will, a standards development organization, and our role here is to govern the Z-Wave protocol. So these people are going to talk about the latest and greatest that's happening in the Z-Wave protocol. Thank you so much for being here. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Tim.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. I'm going to get out of the way.
All right. All right, my name is Tim Albright. I'm from a media publication called Aviation. We cover the audiovisual industry. But what I do is not important, actually. I tell people that I ask smart people dumb questions. But the questions today are going to be rather smart because of these folks. So I'm going to have everybody introduce themselves in turn. First of all, Mark.
I'm Mark Umina. I work for Scilabs. I'm an FAE, formerly an embedded developer for about 20 years before I joined Scilabs, and happy to be here.
Abe.
Abe Kinney, Senior Director of Product Management at Alarm.com. So we're a platform that and software that integrates many Z-Wave devices for the security industry and channel.
Dan.
Dan Matosian with Yale, part of Fortune Brands. I am a systems engineer on all of our IoT door locks that we make. And we were one of the companies that led the charge on creating this User Credential Command Class.
My name is Tai Nguyen from ADT. I'm a director of firmware engineering, responsible for development of firmware on devices, on some of the hubs and device in your house. Thank you.
All right. We're going to use an acronym called UCCC, and I have a rule that if I use an acronym, I have to define it. So, User Command Class.
User Credential
User
Command Class.
User Credential Class.
User Credentials Command Class.
User Credential Command Class. See, I asked dumb questions. User Credential Command Class. What is it, and why does it matter?
I'll chime in. In short, it's an API for locks to talk to controllers. It's one way to manage the diversity of credentials that are coming out in the market today. Traditionally, in the past, when you have a lock, usually you just use your PIN code or a key. But today, you have PIN code, fingerprints, many other flavor of credential types. So user credentials allows you to a standardized way to manage that between the controller and the device.
All right. Now, Mark, why is a credential command class central to Z-Wave and to the Z-Wave innovation?
So not just credential command class, but any command class is the API that Z-Wave speaks. So for example, if you make a device, say you make a thermostat or a door sensor or really anything, you have to define how that device talks to controllers, to the base station, right? And it's a messy game if you're not always following the same standard. Z-Wave really enforces that command classes are the basic building blocks, the basic language for devices. Those command classes are the same across the board. So if I make a thermostat, or if Ty makes a thermostat, it doesn't matter who makes it, it has to conform to that API, and it makes it super easy to sell devices, to integrate devices. It's not the game of, here's how my device talks, here's a long data sheet, you go ahead and integrate it with your system. Instead, I don't even have to know who's buying to my device. They never have to talk to me. They just take that device, they join it to their system, and that system will say, what command classes do you support? My device will tell them, and then it's that easy.
All right. So then how do new command classes come, how do they exist? How do you guys go from, oh, I have an idea to the command class? Abe?
Sure. So it happens spontaneously, or first you see the need. So that happened in this case, and we'll get more into the details of that need. But once it's recognized, then there's a little bit of documentation. So there is a process within the organization to capture those new ideas, evaluate them, bring them to light, socialize them, bring them on board. But it's fairly painless, right? It's just wanting to get it into the framework of the organization, so other people can interact and try to make it the strongest command class it can be.
So really quick, because Mark, you use the term API. Is API and UCCC synonymous, interchangeable?
API and command class is somewhat, I would say it's synonymous for the purposes of this short
conversation,
discussion.
yes.
Yeah. But generally APIs, generally an API is something, when you create something, you create the interface to it, right? With Z-Wave, when you create something, that API exists in the form of command classes that you have to follow.
Okay.
And that makes the rest of it easy, because everyone knows the API. It's just the Z-Wave standard. So,
All right.
like Avi said, we're all here for the one protocol. Well, it's one API that describes that one protocol. Everybody conforms to it and even designs it, as Abe is talking about.
All right. And then that's what makes everything kind of work together.
Yes, and
All right.
we all work together to define that API. It's not like it's done by somebody else, right? It's all of us.
Abe?
And there's a bunch of folks out there on the floor who want to work with Alarm.com. They say, hey, look at my widget, my gadget. They say, well, if you made a Z-Wave one, that'd be great. It would just work automatically. We'd happily look at it. You know, it'll be a couple weeks of us just vetting it against the different platforms we work at, and you're off to the races. You're happy to sell to our channel. So that's really kind of the meeting ground that really just makes it all work for us. And yeah, otherwise it's that messy world that Mark described, where it's really not worth our time, unless they've got something special or super unique going on, for us to kind of want to mess with a custom one-off when there's a dozen devices already doing it a way we already know how to work with it.
Yeah, it's like you get in a car, you know where the gas pedal is, you know where the brake pedal is, you know where the steering wheel is. That's how Z-Wave works. Everybody does that.
Dan, from your perspective, what exactly drove that initial UCCC effort? Like, what was the driving force behind that?
Yeah, and just to build on the previous question a little bit and build into this, right? This is a member-driven standards development organization now, right? So Z-Wave is going to work on stuff that the members bring, right? So if a member has a use case or a business case that they need to see standardized, in our case, right, if you look at the market, door locks are everywhere now, and they have all types of credentials, fingerprint, facial recognition, right, RFID, but none of it's standardized. And so working with Alarm.com and ADT, we saw an opportunity, right, that if we standardize this, right, it could create a lot of possibilities, right, to make this smoother for future developments, right? And so that need of coming up with that method to standardize credentials on locks kind of kick-started this whole process of creating this command class.
All right. Ty, I want to start with you, but have everybody kind of chime in on this. When you do collaboration between companies, sometimes they're competitors, right? How does that happen? How does that evolve? How does that take shape?
Yeah, I'm going to make sure I'm not going to piss off any lawyers in this conversation here. But, I think that's a very sensitive subject that everybody dance around a bit, right? But what the alliance has established, at least for this alliance, is a transparent framework where folks can come in and be able to openly discuss and trust each other's. As well as, when we discuss topics, we keep it in a very generic format that the question is phrasing as how does this work for everyone and generically for everyone instead of just for me or for you, then it becomes proprietary. Then we dance in the IP realms.
And I can add a little to that. So I kind of, I don't know what I would say, moderated, project managed the user credential command class. And being with Scilabs as the chip vendor, I thought about it a lot. I thought, well, if I go into these meetings that are weekly and I say something that maybe Ty doesn't want me to share with alarm.com or whoever, right? I was trying to be very careful. And what I learned is that by like the second or third meeting, there really weren't any secrets. Everybody was happy to share. And further, everybody was happy to work with each other because they're all smart companies. They employ a lot of smart engineers. And you could feel the excitement that people had to work with the other teams rather than be careful around the other teams. They would come in and we would sometimes say, oh, this, what are we going to do here? That's probably a good question for Dan. Okay, Dan, what do you think? And it was like everybody became the same company under the protocol, which is kind of exactly what you want for an SGO.
I mean, there's plenty of other things for us to work on. This is really just foundational stuff, right? And none of us succeed if we don't have a strong foundation to innovate and develop, great things on top of Z-Wave. And Z-Wave, again, isn't the only way to do things. So, I think we all win by trying to make it the strongest and most capable standard and to be current with evolving technology, techniques that's coming out in hardware. So I think it's really not that controversial at this sort of thing, that we're just trying to really make a good product, a good framework so that we can then deliver innovation and great features on top of it later.
Yeah, and just one thing to add is, as a lock manufacturer, I actually found myself hoping and looking for ways to get other lock manufacturers more involved in the process. And one of the main reasons behind it is the more eyes on it, the more people that came to the table, the better the end result was going to be, and the more we were going to be able to accomplish and cover all the edge cases, and it would just make for a better standard in the long run, right? You don't have to bring your secrets to the table, right? You all get together and decide, hey, we want to standardize this. Let's all work together to do it in a way that works for everybody. And when you're working together in a larger group like that, the end result is just, it just comes out much better.
And the reverse view is also true, right? As a controller manufacturers, we want devices to standardize and share how we should do it effectively so that I can work with Yale and at the same time go work with QuickSet without having to change anything.
Yeah. I want to get into the actual business case of this idea, of this concept of developing. Ty, from your guys' perspective, what was the business case? What was the market driver? What were your customers telling you and the folks that were installing your product and using your product?
Certainly. I mean, ADT joined the development of User Credential Command Class, but at the same time, we were actively developing a program called Trusted Neighbor, which we launched. So at the time, there was a clear need of solving, managing our customers' credential diversity. Right, we launched phases with just pin code access, pin codes, and then looking forward to other type of credentials like fingerprints, other biometrics, voice, palm prints, etc., whatever else that comes. So the question we were asking ourselves is, we have a need to solve. How would we solve it? Do we solve it in some secret sauce, or do we solve it one time and never have to deal with it again? And that's where our internal discussion comes out. Do we engage the alliance, contributing resources to help standardize this, and we're all going to make use of it, or are we going to do something else? And I think we chose the right decisions. Really
quickly, because I want to get Dan's side on that. You said you decided that instead of solving it, you wanted to solve it once and not solving it over and over again. Why is that? Like, explain that to me.
Certainly. So at the time, we have a very unique needs, right? Immediate needs is to solve how to manage fingerprint-based access. So during that time, User Credential Command Class was not mature enough for us to adopt and launch with. So there was a very conscious decisions of wait and make sure we use User Credential Command Class instead of come up with another proprietary reason to manage it. And that becomes very fruitful because today, by adopting User Credential Command Class, we're ready to support any other biometrics or any the type of credential of the futures. Okay. So essentially, future-proof ourselves by doing it once.
All right. Then Dan, from the other side, what was the business driver?
Yeah, and just to kind of build on what Ty was saying there, right? When we started the User Credential Command Class, we kind of had a spot for fingerprints, but we didn't have it fully envisioned what it was going to be. And then Yale had a fingerprint lock, right? But we didn't have it standardized in any way. It was just through our app. ADT approached us. They wanted a fingerprint lock for their system. Obviously, the business case was born from there. And we just happened to be working on the User Credential Command Class at the time. And they were able to join, and we were able to add in more functionality, right, to create the world's first Z-Wave lock that's fully, where the fingerprints are fully managed from a Z-Wave controller and a Z-Wave app, which is all done through the User Credential Command Class, right? So in our case, the business case was we wanted to partner with ADT, and then doing it in the standards organization was kind of a no-brainer, because now that we've done this with ADT, it's really simple for me to go to alarm.com and say, hey, we have a fingerprint lock. You guys already use Z-Wave. Let's make this happen. And it can easily accelerate with other partners from there.
Mark, we've talked a lot about having competitors at the table. Co-opetition is one of my favorite terms for that. When you look at the SDO participation, how does that fit into this story of collaboration of, again, competitors collaborating at the same table?
It's a big one. So I'll keep it simple. I think one of the biggest takeaways there is anybody can. These are all smart companies, right? And anybody can design. Any of these companies could have defined and designed the user credentials command class on their own, and even if they did a perfect job, right? Even if it was exactly what everybody wanted, not having everybody at the table during the development of it, it's very hard to understand intent. And you could easily look at that and say, well, why did they do it that way? I wouldn't have done that. Even if by the end of you developing it, you might have ended up there. So I think that everybody at the table sharing ideas obviously creates an environment where you can, edge cases are a big thing, right? Where you can catch those edge cases and say, this is important to us. Maybe it didn't matter to these guys, but I think intent and coming out the other side of the tunnel, all knowing that you've agreed on everything, is a huge thing. And there's a lot of satisfaction in that too, not just functionality.
Abe, I want to jump off of something that Mark's just said there and get the three of you guys' take on this. What did you learn from others' intent? Like, what did you take away from those conversations, from those weekly calls, that maybe you wouldn't have gotten there had you not heard Ty's intent or Dan's intent or somebody else's intent of why they were thinking a certain area or a certain direction?
This is where I'm the fill-in for the guy who was on most of the calls, but I think just to kind of echo Mark, what I did hear through the people on my team is that it was sort of harder than they thought, right? The basics are straightforward, but they learned to kind of, I think, plan for the future, think about how do we have other biometrics in the future. So I think it was good for them to just imagine, and also imagine and interacting with all the various platforms we interact with. It was good to kind of flush it out, make it more real in their minds, and thus kind of pre-prove it out for success.
Okay. Ty?
I mean, for us, right, learning from participating in SDO, give us a glimpse of what the industry is thinking, right? Everybody collectively is bringing a piece of information of what they want, and then collaboratively we form it into a standardized way to manage it for everyone, not just one. So in that aspect, our engineers who participate learn a ton from their personal development, as well as we had an insight into what our other people are doing, how should we contribute, how should we work together to form what's the next thing that's coming so we can support it together.
Dan?
Yeah, and to build on what these guys are saying, I agree with pretty much everything, right? I think the big takeaway is that you're on the cutting edge of the innovation here, right? Creating a standard, it is innovation. And trying to do these things by yourselves, you're going to miss a lot, right? And by doing it in these meetings and in these forums with as many people from across the industry as possible and involved, it was incredible how many edge cases and different things we thought of and added along the way, right? Like a notification for this. Well, what if we did this slightly this way? And I think by going through that process, and it was painful at times, right? There was a lot of details and a lot of things to work through. But the end result kind of speaks for itself, right? We have a new command class here that's pretty future-proof and set us up for door locks and credential types and moving forward here, right? Because we're also not done with it.
Just as a small note on this, right? Dan hit it on the nail here. User Credential Command Class is a very complex that is supposed to be backward compatible with some of the older locks and implementations. So there was a lot of edge cases, a lot of testing iterations on how do we make this work for the newer credential as well as still being backward compatible to the user access code command class. So everybody pitched in, everybody contributed, hey, this is the edge case, we tested it, blah, 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 et cetera, and we finally arrived or fine-tuned the final result.
Ty, you said something earlier that as you were developing your oh good lord, the
Trusted neighbor.
thank you, trusted neighbor. You said that the UCCC wasn't quite ready yet. What made it ready? When did you go, you know what? I think we're ready now, right? Whether that was a business case or whether it was technology or whatever it was, what made it ready for you guys?
So this is going to be a longer answer because it takes a lot to get to deciding and actually get to readiness. So when Trusted Neighbors started and we were evaluating what to do with fingerprint, and we know the alliance has started, but it's nowhere near what we wanted. So internally, there's a struggle of should we standardize way or should we do something else? And eventually, we agreed, or our leadership agreed to do the standardized ways. That means ADT is pouring in resources to pitch in with everybody else. We accelerated. I remember we formed the Tiger team based on our meeting at University of Central Florida Summit. Right, everyone gathered together. We defined the Tiger team, the objectives, and becomes very sensitive to our members' needs. So the alliance came together and know that there is a business case right now, and we need to accelerate. We need to move things faster to get there. The alliance also pitch in form of getting certifications, toolings, and supporting and get certification specs ready. So everyone pitched in. So the answer to that is, as a member raised up, this is no longer theoretical. This is practical. We need to get this out for each others. That everybody pitch in and make it happen.
I want each of you to think about your market, right, and your customers and their customers. Mark, I'll start with you on this. When you look at this, how did the standardized approach create efficiencies in the market? How did it create avenues for you guys to kind of go to market faster, stronger, hit more areas that you maybe weren't able to hit? How did creating this working in this standardized system create better market conditions, I guess?
I think I would probably lean on and you heard this a little bit from Ty, but there was a lot to think about in terms of edge cases. There were tons of situations that applied to some companies and didn't apply to other companies, some products within companies and not other products without, so what I kind of learned in project managing it or moderating it, I guess, each week was that some teams or some members of the teams had almost an affection for certain parts of the issue, right? And while others didn't, it's not that they didn't care about it, but they weren't as excited to bite down on certain parts of it, right? So you'd see these certain members pop up and say, oh, I'll take that really ugly situation because I love this stuff. And that happened over and over to the point where everything got done. But I want to add to that it was very spontaneous. It moved on its own. It was like a fire that lit, and it kept burning. Every week, everybody would come, and it wasn't surprising toward the end, but at the beginning, it was very surprising how much got done between the last meeting and the current meeting. And he'd say, wow, this is really going to work, because this person loves this person loves that. And I think that was the coolest thing about it.
They each had their own specific
and
areas.
it created such a good piece of code after, or as a result of that. So,
I'm just going to add one big one, right? At the end of the day, I don't have to deal with a problem that Dan already solved.
Right. I mean, yeah, exactly.
We've kind of hit this, but I want to ask this more directly. Because Ty, you mentioned this when you talked about trusted neighbor and whether or not you guys are going to go down your own path or go on the UCCC path. Mark, what are the risks of doing it by yourself, of writing your own code, of doing your own thing, both from a financial standpoint, but also from a market standpoint?
I said it a little earlier, and I'll kind of reiterate it. Even if you make the perfect amount, or the perfect piece of code, if one of the members made the perfect user credentials command class, the intent behind their design decisions are not understood unless you're part of it. You just don't know why something was done a certain way. And you will have an opinion that it might not be the right way. But if you're there for the whole thing, you're going to see why that happened. And you're not going to say, what a silly idea. You're going to say, yeah, I remember that. That was because of something Ty brought up or something Dan brought up. And that was actually one of the most exciting parts of it, is to see a problem happen, or to see a little wrinkle, and then you start to have an intuition about who is going to want to tackle that wrinkle. So I think, again, any one of these companies could have written it. But I don't think that going it alone really shares the intent behind the design.
And you hear everyone talking about these edge cases of variety in the market, and no one of us is familiar with all of that variety. We're still supporting GE Interlogix panels on customers, right, that have controller code written 15 years ago, and you don't have to aim for perfect alignment, but we might, people have bits of knowledge that can steer things towards better compatibility, better favorable conditions for your product to be successful in the market.
Yeah, with participation from all, it can be pretty near perfect in the end.
I mean, in a software development realm, right, everyone have pressure that they have to answer to.
Yeah.
So in scenario, you're competing against schedule, right? You will make some sacrifice, not cutting corners, but make certain assumptions that are only very specific to your own use case. So then in that context, the next guy can't make use of it because their controller works differently. So standardization will win this one.
Okay. Dan, I want to take people on a path from the spec through to product launch, right? From the spec to a certified product out in the market. What does that journey look like?
It is quite the journey. But it starts with a business case, right? And in our case, it was actually Alarm.com and Yale got together, realized that the existing command classes in Z-Wave just weren't going to cut it for the future of door locks. And we said, hey, let's make a new one. And so we started with the paperwork of intent to the alliance, saying, hey, here's our new idea. We want to make this a thing. That goes through the marketing committee to make sure everyone's on board. From there, it gets kicked over to the application working group, which meets once a week. In a lot of cases, these things will get hashed out directly in that application working group meeting. But for something as complicated as this, we actually spun up a dedicated team, as Mark has alluded to, and met semi-regularly to just write the spec and get through it. And then this was the hardest part, right? This took months of effort from all companies, applying resources to it, writing the actual specification, reviewing it together, and making sure we had all parts covered. Once you kind of get the spec into a place where you want it, right, we bring it back up to the board, we give it to a final review and vote, and then it gets ratified into one of the two releases for the Z-Wave Alliance. Once it's ratified into one of their standard releases, then the certification group kicks in from there. And they take that spec, and then they have to make a test plan for it. And the Z-Wave has the certification test tool, which is wonderful, right, and used to certify all your devices. But for a new command class, right, the new scripts have to be written. While all of that is happening, folks like myself and ADT and Alarm.com, we're developing, right? Because while the spec is getting developed, it's an open source SDK now. we're also developing the open source sample applications and the infrastructure that needs to go in place for devices to actually implement this on an MCU. So once all of that comes together at the end, the cert program's ready, the specification's ratified, we've done our development, then we take it through certification testing. And being the first device through, there's usually some surprises. You miss some things here and there that you got to work through, but you stay the course, and then eventually you're certified. And then once you're certified, as long as internally you're good, you're ready to use the Z-Wave logo and bring it to market.
Okay.
We should add maybe that it's quite the journey, because I think, in this case at least, because this is probably, or certainly, the most complicated command class in Z-Wave. And it still took really only about a little over a year. So you can expect simpler command classes to be much quicker.
Yeah, I think, then skip through the painful parts. Is where being the first.
We're supposed to encourage people, Ty.
Well, they need to know the reality of it as well. But there's a positive side to it, right? When company comes together and when it's the first time implementing something, you don't have equipments to test with, right? That was always the challenge. Yes, you can test against certifications, that's fine, but what if you miss something? So then you need that other device to be to prove out the edge cases. This is the experience you want to deliver to the users. So companies comes together. We test against each other's, and that's how we polish the edges, and we bring that perfection to our customers.
I believe all of you guys have taken things through certification, correct?
Yes.
So Abe, what were some of those challenges? What were some of those hurdles that you faced going through the certification process?
I mean, I think the devices that Alarm.com has brought through have been not as novel as what we're talking about here. So I don't recall a lot of major challenges, right? I think we were able to piggyback and leverage the existing standards and the existing frameworks that were already written. So, when we wanted to have a thermostat or a water sensor or whatever, those models are pretty clear. And so I think I'm sure there were challenges, but they were minor, right? Just course corrections to just make sure we're in alignment with the standard.
Okay.
A giant shout out to the certification working group, right? They make sure all the pre-certification test tools allow us to hash out any problems before we're submitting to.
So you guys do it internally with those tools?
Absolutely.
Okay. All right.
And you can use those tools as you're developing anytime you want to make sure you haven't broken anything.
And then
So you have a pretty good idea before you go to cert how well if it's gonna pass.
Yeah.
And just for a specific pain point, right, that we faced, because we were the first lock to take through certification with this command class, right, we realized that some of the test cases that were written didn't quite work, right, and we had to kind of go back and forth with the certification working group. Like Ty said, they did a great job because those test cases were written against the sample application, and we were using a real device, right, so we found some pain points along the way, just finalizing the actual cert program to make sure it was realistic.
How common is that? Because and you can correct me here because I'm going to reword what I think you just said. That is the companies, the members are able to go back to the certification and say, hey, look, you guys need to adjust. You guys need to go back and make some corrections. And so it's a constant back and forth of each of you, adjusting each other.
Yeah, and that's par for the course for any SDO, right? Like, nothing is perfect, right? Everyone tries to write something as best they can, but mistakes are always made. There was a few more because this one was new, right? But there is a process in place for if you feel that one of the certification tests isn't correct, or you think your device should get a pass or behave slightly different, but it should be okay, there's a forum through the certification working group to bring these up and discuss among the alliance and to see if you can get consensus and get it approved.
Mark, I'm going to start with you on this. One of the things that we've talked about is getting involved, right? It is Abe has to say, yeah, I'm going to give you an hour a week, right? Not just, Alarm.com has to say that, but Abe has to say that. So why should somebody get involved? Why should somebody join these calls?
Well, in addition to everything we talked about, there's a huge benefit to designing together. But I'll say that one thing that was interesting with the calls and why you might want to join as a new member is it doesn't matter how big or small you are as a company. There are small companies that are heard as loud or louder than some of the big companies. So it's not a giant organization. It's a right-size organization, I'd say. And you could join tomorrow and say, I want to add a command class for X or Y, and propose it, and people will listen. So the calls they're actually pretty fun. You hop into the calls weekly, and you say your piece, and there's no lottery, there's no nothing. You can talk, and you can be heard, and you can make a difference. And you can craft Z-Wave to be what you want to use in the future, or even for now, right?
I'll add a different perspective, right? From a talent development perspective, I've sent junior engineers into the alliance to participate. They came out subject matter expert.
Wow.
They've gained confidence in interacting with other companies, working within the framework of the alliance, a standardized way. They came out shiny. So I would highly recommend companies to send their engineers in, and it's a great way to develop talent.
Yeah, and that's to the point that juniors can participate. It's not like you got to be some Z-Wave expert, right? You just have to want to be there.
And maybe as the manager who told the guy on my team to spend the hour, like we're invested in Z-Wave to give us leverage in the market, to work with many great manufacturers, to have consistency of the experience, and so by participating, we're just really leaning into that and fully making sure we fully realize that leverage we're expecting and hoping to get out of the standard in the end.
Abe, when you take a look at the involvement, and you mentioned the gentleman that you have on your team, take a step back, each of you, and take a look at it from a company standpoint. How does involvement help your company in the future? How does it help you prepare for the future? How does it help you develop for the future? How does your involvement help the actual company?
Sure. So it's a little bit about what Ty said, like, solving the problem once the right way instead of trying to solve it half a dozen times, or, giving up after the second time and then never, then the whole kind of use case falls apart because it's too sort of bespoke across all of the vendors. So, we're here to try to deliver great experiences that keep up with those people not following the standards, right? And we hope that by bringing them into the standard, we can not only deliver those use cases, but deliver them in a way that kind of has that Z-Wave foundation of consistency, backwards compatibility, working across the ecosystem. So really deliver those use cases maybe even more successfully than they could have been some other way.
Can I
more
add
efficiently, all the good things.
Yeah. Can I add to that, and you brought this up earlier, that the interoperability makes it so that you can take a device and immediately work with it, join it to your hub, and see it act as it should. And if you were to design something, say outside of the Z-Wave org, and you have an interface that you've created, and then you've got a document describing that interface, and it could be this thick or not, and then you present it to Abe or any of these companies, say, I want to sell you my device, then nobody wants to be on the other side of a maybe, right? And you're really on the other side of a maybe if it takes a lot of work for them to go and check this device. But if you just say, it conforms to these command classes, it talks the way you would expect according to Z-Wave, and have a look at it. It's a very different conversation at that point.
And it gives you a voice, right, in the development of this, right? And so the important part about that is like, I have a lot in common with other locks, right? But by leading this and being a part of this, I was able to make sure that what we created worked specifically for my use case, right? And it was going to meet the needs of my business case, and it was going to be something that we can actually develop against, right? And so I don't think I would have had the same result if I kind of sat on the sidelines watching this happen, waiting for it to get done, and then just consumed whatever was output from there, right? I was able to make sure that the things that we needed to bring back for our company were well represented and put into the standard.
For companies that doesn't have a horse in the race, whatever that we're working on, participate means that you have the detailed understanding of what's coming and allow you to maybe draw up future use case. One of the examples for us is waiting or observing the development of Z-Wave long range. Allow us to anticipate, hey, what would be the future use case for devices in the next 3 or 4 years? Where we can position ourselves in some of those use cases.
All right, Mark, we're going to start with you on this one because Ty mentioned what's next. So what's next for Z-Wave?
I was all ready. Z-Wave long range. So Z-Wave long range is just what it says it is. It's a very long range protocol. I mean, we're seeing numbers about, and these are real numbers in residential environments of 1.2 kilometers in not line of sight at all. Going bouncing around through houses and streets, different elevations. These are numbers that you'd never see before, except for maybe with LoRa. But Z-Wave adds a lot more than what LoRa brings you. We've got command classes that define all these devices. You don't have to go and create your own definitions of how to talk to devices. Long range has been created, it's been tested, and it's ready to go. We're going to see it roll out in a lot of devices and in some decent numbers and take on some things that were hard to take on before, like multifamily. Multifamily dwellings are notoriously a little bit difficult because when you worked with a mesh network before, the older Z-Wave, you had to build that network out from the center so that the devices could talk to each other and get back to the gateway. That's not the case anymore. You just put a device somewhere and it will talk. So it's a star network. It's very powerful. It's very efficient. The transmit power is great. Sensitivity is good on our chips, and we're looking forward to it.
And then from a command class perspective, right, the UCCC is not done. We laid the foundation and got some good stuff in there, right, but we also set it up to future-proof it a little bit to be able to add more credential types to it. And so work actually continues on that today to add in some specifics needed to add support for things like RFID and other things that are coming within the industry. And then another big release that the Z-Wave Alliance just did is the first new device type in a long time called the Wake on Event node. And what's special about this device type is that it has no power at all. There's no battery, there's no wire, there's nothing. It's just sitting there completely off. And then once an event occurs, it takes the energy from that event, say like a door handle turning or a spring getting released, to wake up the Z-Wave chip just long enough to send out a notification to say, hey, something happened. And so an example of this would be like a water sensor, a water leak detector underneath your water heater, right? It's just sitting there. You don't want to ever have to worry about the battery power on it, right? And you just want to know that if the water ever leaked, that thing's going to fire once and send me an alert. And that's all you ever need it for, is that one time to make sure you catch that water leak, right? So it's going to be really exciting to see what kind of use cases and innovation happens with this new device type.
Ty, Mark mentioned some of the technical stuff that's underway. What are some areas that members can join now? They can join those weekly or those meetings to help drive some of this innovation.
Certainly, there's application working group, there's certification working group, there's the marketing working group that needs a lot of help, right? The alliance is a standard development alliance, right? We depends on members to participate and bring awareness and produce. So there is a very strong needs right now for marketing and PR. So if your company has PR marketing resource, please consider signing up to help drive the message for the Z-Wave Alliance.
This is for each of you in turn. What is the easiest way to get involved in the Z-Wave Alliance?
Call RV.
Yeah. I'm glad you said that. I was thinking that, but...
That is 555-1212.
You join.
Yeah, you join. Okay.
You join, and then you don't have to have an agenda in mind, right? Like Ty was saying, there's these working groups, they meet regularly. Once you're a member, anyone's welcome, right? Just sit in and listen, hear what's going on, right? And then kind of feel it out and figure out what areas make sense for you to get involved based on what resources you want to put into it, right? But even just sitting and listening is probably beneficial because, like we've talked about, you get to hear what's going on in the industry, right? You get to be on the front lines of this innovation, and at that point, you're in the stream. So if something does come up, right, that you need to take advantage of, you're well positioned because you're part of the flow to bring that to the group and see if you can get that into the standard when the time comes.
Yeah, in another way is an even farther back approach is to look at the technology, look at the chips, look at the functionality, look at the command classes, and decide if this works for you. And at that point, the Alliance does take care of its members. There's a lot of talk about new products. You'll see them on LinkedIn, you see them in various places, newsletters. So I think just take a look at the technology, decide if it looks like an organization that you could benefit from and add to, and put Z-Wave in your device.
All right. Abe, same question. Is if you were talking to a manufacturer, you're talking to a company, is like what would be the easiest, besides calling Ari, would be the easiest
I mean,
path?
that's pretty easy. I
That
guess
is
I would
pretty
probably
easy.
just, I would probably have to just lean into the more on the benefits, right? You work with the standard. That's the easiest way to work with alarm.com.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
All right, gentlemen, thank you guys. We've got a couple minutes for questions. If anybody has any questions. Nobody has questions. All right. One? Yep.
Oh boy.
So we asked about. Okay. So Z-Wave long range. Z-Wave long range. What are some products that can leverage that?
I mean, basically all of them, right? I think in general, from a single-family home perspective, the star topology works, and I think almost all devices would benefit from having Z-Wave long range as an option, right?
So,
And it-
I'm sorry.
yeah, go ahead.
I would just recommend you turn to your left and take a look at that table or the table behind you. Most of those are Z-Wave long-range capable devices.
Okay.
And you can see the category of devices that are being adopted by manufacturers. And they're all driven by a use case that customer needs, right? Not just out of the bubble.
For our use cases, we're talking about the perimeter of the home back to a central hub. So you need to cover kind of possibly every area of the home, maybe even to the yards. That would be great.
Which is crucial for a lock because we're on the perimeter, right? So that's one of our biggest calls is it's out of range and it's not always easy to add repeaters. Long range just solves that.
And on how is it different than LoRa? I could talk all day on that one. I developed a lot of LoRa devices and Z-Wave. So the biggest one is command classes, in that we talked about this a bit, but if you want to make a device that you plan to sell, you really need to think about how that device interfaces to the base stations and gateways and ecosystems that would adopt it. And with LoRa, you do not have any defined command classes. You don't have a defined API. You create that on your own. And when you create that on your own, you don't have any of the stuff we talked about. You don't have any help from anybody else. You have to go and then pitch that API to companies like Alarm.com who might adopt that device or might not, because the API is too complicated for them to want to adapt to or to integrate into their ecosystem. So the command classes are a very set standard that you have to adhere to, and when you do that, it takes nothing for Abe to pick up that device, join it to his hub, and then evaluate it. Otherwise, it is weeks, months of work, and potentially endless work, because as you change your device, as you add new features to it, you're changing that API, and that breaks compatibility. And when the compatibility is broken several times, it starts to look not like something you want to maintain yourself, right? Not like something you want to have in your ecosystem. But with Z-Wave, you send a OTA update, over-the-air update, and now that device supports those new things. Those things are in the standard, in the spec, and it's the same as getting in any car, right? Gas pedals here, brake pedals there, steering wheels there, done. That's a big one. It's a really big difference between the two. There are more, but that's probably the quickest one to talk about.
Good deal. All right. Well, thank you, gentlemen, so much. Thank you guys for your time. And I believe we're just doing drinks and food. So enjoy the happy hour. Well, drinks and food. Well, drinks and food. I didn't. Well, we're going to stop talking now. What I'm saying is, we're going to stop talking now. You can have drinks and food.